Hey everybody, this is Bo back in the Sports Lounge. We want to do a shout out to our fans and friends listening to us all over the world, equaling 1.5 million listeners, especially the ones overseas stationed around this country, military bases. Thanks so much for making us number one in what we do. And right now we're going to go out and have a little conversation with wrestling Olympic head wrestling coach Shannyn Gillespie. How you doing, Coach Gillespie?
I'm doing pretty good. How are you, Bo?
Well, outside of stuttering there for a little bit, I think we're doing pretty good here. We've been very busy. The UFC, the Affliction Notice, a lot of the professional fighters all give homage and credit to what you guys do in wrestling.
Well, I think it's a situation where wrestling is a big part of the mixed martial arts scene right now, and we're just glad to be a part of the mixed martial arts scene, and hopefully one day we'll be able to build the bridge and build the gap between the sports and get a little bit more credit and or publicity for wrestling itself.
I think you see it across. There's a lot of club teams now starting up. Oakland University here in Michigan has created their wrestling program, just 3 years old, and they're getting a lot of attention from people who want to strive and reach the professional circuits. And a lot of them who are educated realize that just because you're jiu-jitsu, just because you're a good kickboxer, just because you can use your hands, you will not make it unless you can ground and pound. And wrestlers do that better than anybody on the planet.
Yeah, I think if you're able to get the opportunity to see MMA on television and you listen to some of the people's interviews and really just look at a lot of the gyms that are opening up all over the place, wrestling is a key component in most of the combative sports. Without the wrestling skill set, then it becomes very difficult. If you look at some of the top champions, for instance, you'll notice that a lot of these key guys that are, number one, number two, number three, and champions in the sport of MMA, whichever type of organization that you're talking about, a lot of them are wrestlers. So I think wrestling is a really good foundation in and of itself, but it also can help you do other things in the mixed martial arts world. Yeah,
I think a lot of eyes always focused is that years ago, the only avenue that a wrestler could go was either coaching or in the WWE, and most wrestlers sort of steered away from that until the big dollar sign showed up, and you can't blame them for entering that arena and getting paid that much money, be doing something they've done and entertain the audience. But now you have a real opportunity to step into a ring, make some decent bucks. Jason Ramstadter's doing it. Coach Ricard Lama is doing it in the WEC. He's out of Elmhurst College in Adams State for the predecessor. And now with Brock Lesnar just decimating the heavyweights as a Greco guy, it's got to be very prideful, you as a coach, and everything that you've done to see one of your ranks legitimately rise up very quickly and dominate like nobody has dominated that sport before.
Yeah, I think it's a good idea for people to try to make a living, certainly. And wrestling is in the situation we are now. If I can throw a little plug in there, they've created a fund, if you will, for athletes to try to keep some of our better athletes, like a Brock Lesnar, in the sport for a little bit longer. What they've done now is created a fund where Olympic champions can make $250,000, and they've got, like a stair step all the way down. And this year for the World Championships, if any USA wrestler wins a world title, they'll be given $50,000. So it's a unique opportunity right now where we're getting a little bit more incentive on the freestyle and Greco-Roman side. And, of course, in the MMA world, if you're able to use the fundamental skills that you learned in folk style, freestyle, and Greco-Roman, you indeed have the opportunity to become a great mixed martial artist as well.
Yeah, and you come from, legendary stock of Rocky Bonomo. He's got many of his top wrestlers, All-Americans. You can see him in UFC. They got biographies, and they all give homage back to that particular program, as well as yours, because you're a product of that school.
That's correct. I went to Lock Haven University back in the 90s, and I was an All-American my junior year. My senior year, I kind of fell short of my goals. I blew my knee out, so I wasn't able to fulfill what my goals were that year. But I ended up going to the Olympic Training Center a year soon after that, and several years later, I find myself coaching at another Olympic Training Center here at Northern Michigan University. So along the way, I was able to use all of the skill sets that I learned from Lock Haven University, take them to the Olympic Training Center in Colorado Springs, and now I'm using those skill sets to teach athletes here at Northern Michigan University to further their careers in education and athletic goals at the Olympic Education Center.
And before we start talking about what you just went through, a little sidebar is that all you had to do was watch the Olympic wrestlers against the Olympic boxers on the American side, and you quickly saw what a class act our Olympic wrestlers were compared to the boxers. The entire boxing team was fired, as I think you're well aware of, and they rehired a new group because of the debacle that was. And I'm not afraid to say it. I was kind of upset the fact the boxers wouldn't accept the bronze, where our guys And our ladies, Randy Miller, stood proud with what she achieved, and I think the wrestlers did very well for the U.S.
Yeah, I think anytime that you can have an Olympic champion, it's a good situation for your national governing body and, of course, your country, your prideful situation or area that you're living in. I believe that we can have even more success. I think we can do even better than we did the last time, and that's what our goal as a country are. We had one Olympic champion and 2 bronze medalists. Randy Miller, as you mentioned, was a product of the United States Olympic Education Center, and with her personal coach, Levi, she was able to do great things, and I just would like to, say to everybody that it's possible to become an Olympic champion. It's possible to become an Olympic medalist. You just got to set a goal and dream big and then work hard at that every single day.
Absolutely. Now, what have you been doing, man? We know you've been traveling around a little bit because we had a hard time getting a hold of you. So share with our audience everything that's been going on in Coach Gillespie's world.
Well, it's been a crazy, let's say, last 25, 26 days. I think I might have sent you a text or an email a while ago. I started my summer off in Canada, which was the Canada Cup, and we did well up there. Clarissa Chan, who was a USA World Champion last year, or 2008, she was a champion again in the Canada Cup tournament. So we were up there for 10 days for a competition in a camp. Ali Bernard was there, an Olympian, and Chelsea Campbell was the other champion that won the Canada Cup. So I was there for 10 days, and then I went on to Spain at the Grand Prix of Spain, where we ended up taking second as a team. We had about, say, 7 or 8 athletes from Oklahoma City University. We had 3 or 4 athletes from the USOEC program and 1 athlete from Cumberland. We ended up winning 6 medals in Spain, and that culminated with another 7-day camp. From that 7-day camp, I went from Spain to, I think I flew to JFK, and then from JFK to Minneapolis, and then Minneapolis to the Fargo, North Dakota, where they just had the Junior Nationals for the women, and I think the Junior Nationals for the men is still going on, if I'm pretty correct, right now.
Yep, it is.
I've basically been going from competition to competition to competition, helping America's elite athletes get to their goal of, one day reaching their Olympic goal, and then at the same time recruiting and visiting people from other countries and networking with other coaches so we can try to step up camps and competitions going forward so we can help America's youth and the world's youth get to the Olympic Games in 2012.
You mentioned a couple names there. Obviously, a lot of us know Randy Miller. She's a class act, and she actually probably could have a career in mixed martial arts because she's got the size and the movement, and she looks like she could handle herself pretty good. But Clarice Chung, what a great ambassador she is to interview. We had a chance to speak with her, and she represents the sport in such a professional level that I think that's why every time we get her on, the hit chart goes up, the emails go up. She's a great ambassador for what you all do.
Well, I had the opportunity to spend a lot of time with Clarissa Chan in Canada, and she is, I forgot to mention that she was a world champion in 2008, and she was also an Olympian, so I just want to throw that in there so everyone understands that she is an elite athlete. But yeah, she's a well-rounded person in that she's a really good athlete, she can excel at the highest level, and she's a really good interviewer, and she has an idea of what's going on in the world and in and outside of wrestling. So anytime you have the opportunity to speak to her, I would say it was a good idea. And then when you just see her train, I was talking to Kelsey Campbell, who was also another champion at the Canada Cup. Kelsey Campbell is 59 kilos. Clarissa Chan is 48 kilos. And she was explaining to me, I've never drilled with anybody like that. Clarissa Chan is a world-class athlete when she's actually competing and when she's drilling. And that's just something to throw out there to any athlete in any sport. Even when you're practicing, there's a certain way that you're trying to practice so that you can imitate and almost exactly do what you're going to do in training that you want to be doing in the competition. And when you're able to understand how to drill, it's not just going through the motions, but it's getting your intensity up, it's working on specific things, and then you have a goal in mind. So at the end of that drill session or in that practice, you've done what you need to do, and then the next day you're going to do it again with a different goal in mind. And that's what I think, when I think of Clarissa Chan, that's what I think about. She is determined as anybody that you'll ever want to meet, and then she's able to reach one of her goals, and now she set her goals a little bit higher for the 2012 Olympics.
Yeah, and, she was just a class act, as well as most of the Olympians we had a chance to speak with. When I say most, we didn't get to speak to all of them, but even the gentlemen.